A very good evening to India. I hope everyone is safe during this pandemic. Myself, Sumukha S., a final year BCom student of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College. Welcome to the 68th International Webinar of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College. At the outset, I'm happy to inform you all that our Evening Degree College is celebrating its Golden Jubilee year. On behalf of our college, we congratulate all the stakeholders. Today's webinar is fully hosted by the students of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College. I request everyone to kindly pardon us in case of any mistakes. Department of Library and Information Sciences, in association with MYRA School of Business, Mysore, India, is organizing this international webinar on Global Standards in Library Science 7. I now request Vinay Sagar sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, to play a small video of our college. Over to you, sir.
A great journey begins with a small step. Proving this statement true, it all began in 1930 when two women, educational enthusiasts, took up a noble initiative. In the erstwhile posh locality of Seshadripuram, Srimati Anandamma and Srimati Seethamma started a primary school with 20 children. Now, Seshadripuram Educational Trust under its umbrella has 36 institutions. It all began with the educational visionary Sri K.M. Nanjappa, the then President of Seshadripuram Educational Trust. In 1971, which has been a landmark in the history of education for the working students by starting Seshadripuram Evening College.
Our college started with the primary objective of imparting formal education to the quality and needy. The college is affiliated to the Bengaluru Central University. Being in the heart of the city, it has an easy reach and connectivity. Its premises comprise of spacious building with good canteen, computerized library, business lab, browsing center, Wi-Fi facility, sports club, thus well equipped for all academic, sports, co-curricular like NSS, NCC, YRC, etc. and extracurricular activities throughout the year. The college organizes orientation program for freshers and guest lecturers to equip them.
As most of us are working in the morning and studying in an evening degree college, it is very facilitative for us to excel in our jobs. Even though we are studying in an evening degree college, we are being provided many state level and national level opportunities to express our talents. Also, many cultural activities are being conducted.
SEDC is engaged in various cultural activities throughout the year. There are numerous committees in the college that perform variedly on their behalf and have a lasting effect on the college, students, as well as outsiders.
Our evening degree college believes in the vision to ignite the minds of every student to identify and develop their inner strength, with the mission to promote holistic development of students by offering quality education and making them self-reliant and progressive.
Our college NCC cadets will visit every academic year in Officers Training Academy Chennai and INS Kadamba Naval Base at Karwar. It will motivate our college NCC cadets to join Indian Armed Forces.
Thank you, sir. I now request Prerana S. of third year BCom to welcome and introduce all the dignitaries to this international webinar. Over to you, Prerana.
Thank you, Sumukha. A very happy evening to India and Sri Lanka. I take this opportunity to welcome you all for the 68th international webinar of our college. At the outset, I would like to thank all the office bearers of this great institution and welcome all of them. Now, I would like to introduce and welcome today's first theme speaker, Dr. Chiranthi Wijesundara, Senior Assistant Librarian, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. Dr. Chiranthi Wijesundara currently serves as a Senior Assistant Librarian at the Main Library, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. She earned her doctoral degree in informatics in the year 2019 from the Graduate School of Library, Information and Media Studies, University of Tsukuba, Japan, and she obtained an MSc in Library, Information and Media Studies from the same university. She has memberships in several organizations such as Association for Information Science and Technology in USA, Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals in UK, Geo Information Society of Sri Lanka, etc. Meantime, she serves as a program coordinator for the postgraduate diploma in Library and Information Science and Masters in Library and Information Science, and as a visiting lecturer at the National Institute of Library and Information Sciences, University of Colombo. Dr. Wijesundara has contributed several publications, and her research interests are in cultural heritage information aggregation and its related metadata technologies, geo-informational applications for cultural heritage preservation, digital libraries, and linked open data. Ma'am, on behalf of Seshadripuram Educational Trust, I welcome you to this webinar. Now, I would like to introduce and welcome today's second team speaker, Dr. Shalini R.R.S., founder and chairperson, MYRA School of Business, Mysore, India. Dr. Shalini R.R.S. is an internationally recognized academic who began her career in academia 44 years back, joining the University of Mysore as a lecturer in the Department of Library and Information Sciences in 1976. She is an institution builder whose brainchild is the MYRA School of Business, which she founded in 2012. She also founded the International School of Information Management, the first information school in India, as an autonomous constituent unit of the University of Mysore in 2005. She is currently involved with Guru India Foundation as a board member and is actively involved in the implementation of the Guru Learning Platform in India and building the Indian Learning Collective. She has served as a UNESCO expert on several occasions and was commissioned to conduct many studies in the last 20 years. Her contributions have won her several awards. She was a Fulbright scholar and a visiting professor at the Department of Computer Science, Virginia Tech, the USA during 2000 and 2001, an adjunct faculty at the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore during 2005 and 7, and a visiting professor at the Indian Statistical Institute, Bangalore during 1998 and 99. Passionate and dedicated to digital scholarship, she has led many digital initiatives in India. She pioneered the electronic thesis and dissertations movement in India in the year 2000 and won the Microsoft grant for implementing Unicode for Indian language in 2003, Adobe Leadership Award in 2004. She conceptualized and developed the Vidyanidhi Digital Library and e-scholarship portal in the year 2000 with funding from the Government of India, which became a national initiative with further funding from the Ford Foundation. She built an online digital library way back in 2000, much before the digital era captured the imagination in India. Ma'am, on behalf of Seshadripuram Educational Trust, I welcome you to this webinar. It is my proud privilege to introduce and welcome one more distinguished person who is presiding in this webinar, Shri W.D. Ashok Sir, Honorary Trustee, Seshadripuram Educational Trust, Bengaluru, India. Sir holds a master's degree in pharmacy, specialized in the field of total parenteral nutrition. He served at the famous Al-Adin Hospital, Kuwait, for over 13 years. He's an honorary trustee of Seshadripuram Educational Trust. Sir is the backbone for all the events conducted in our Evening Degree College. Sir, on behalf of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College, I welcome and request you to preside over this webinar. I would also like to welcome our beloved principal, Professor N.S. Satish Sir, who is the man of perfection and a guiding force for organizing 67 international webinars conducted so far. On behalf of our Department of Library and Information Sciences, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
I welcome all the office bearers and trustees of Seshadripuram Educational Trust and all the principals of our sister institutions, other heads of the institutions, conveners, volunteers, and all participants who have registered across the globe. Now, I welcome Dhareppa Konnur Sir, Program Coordinator, and Rajat PS Sir, IQAC Coordinator. And finally, I welcome our own teaching and administrative staff to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Prerna. May I now request our first theme speaker, Dr. Chiranthi Wijesundara, Senior Assistant at the Librarians, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, to enlighten us on the topic metadata standards in digital libraries. For the next 20 to 25 minutes, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the introduction. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Konnur for inviting me for this special session on global standards in library science. And also thank you, Professor Satish, for your organizing of this event. And I would like to thank all the organizers for inviting me for this session. So I am Chiranthi Wijesundara, attached to University of Colombo. I am working as a librarian and as a visiting lecturer currently. So when Professor Konnur invited me, I was thinking, what should I do? So I thought of doing something related to my research field, something to do with metadata. So, and at the same time, these days, people are discussing about digital libraries, digital resources very much. So I thought of doing something related to that. So today's topic is metadata standards in digital libraries. So let's see what we got in today's presentation. So overview of my presentation is something like this. First, I would like to introduce metadata and what do you mean by that? And also as a library, what is the need for metadata? And then I would like to introduce the digital libraries and the metadata standards. What do you mean by metadata standard? And some metadata standards which widely used in digital libraries. Finally, a small discussion on which metadata standard we should use when we are starting a digital library project. So we have only around 25 minutes, so I'll try to do it quickly. So I know most of the participants are students and librarians, so most of you have heard the word metadata and you probably know what does that mean. And very simply, metadata is data about data. So it's data about that describes other data. But when you say data about data or some other definition, you might confuse because we have data, information, then knowledge, wisdom, various things. Now we have metadata. So sometimes it's very confusing. So I would like to then nobody knows what is inside. Then you have another bottle, same bottle with a label. So if you have a label on that bottle, that means it is a reliable thing. So in this label, you can find various information related to that bottle. So if I ask you to select one of these bottles, you might probably go for the labeled bottle because you know what is inside. So this bottle with the label is a water bottle. So it has some information related to that content, the water and some other facts. So this is data about data. So the data in the water bottle is described using the label on the bottle. So that is very easy example, and you can find a lot of examples like this to describe data about data. And if you go to supermarket, you can find so many examples because most of the products has labels. So the labels are indicating what is inside that package. So metadata is all about something similar to that. And if you take your driver's license, student ID card, or your credit card, it is simply metadata about yourself. It contains your name, your address, and some other details. So it is about you. Then we come to a very familiar example, catalog card. So catalog card is simply a very good example which describes metadata about a book or a library resource. So that is some simple examples to describe metadata. And basically we have various types of metadata. So mainly we have 3 types. So these types are created based on the different purposes. So we have descriptive metadata, which describes certain things like title, creator, or some other details. Then structural metadata, which describe the organization of a certain resource or something. And also administrative metadata like the versions and not version. Administrative means like rights information or some other permission date or something like that. So something to do with administrative stuff. So these are the 3 main metadata we can find in the metadata universe. Other than that, we have some other types as well. But the most ones are like reference metadata, statistical, then technical metadata, which describe technical details, and legal metadata. So these things are categorized according to the different purposes. So you might think, okay, why we need metadata in a library? So in a conventional library, you have a catalog card. Catalog. So these catalog cards, I think you have seen these catalog cards. They are simply representing metadata related to your collection. So in earlier days, even now, we are using AACR to create catalog card. It's a set of rules. Then we have DDC and some other classification systems to classify the books, and also LCS, Library of Congress subject headings. So all these things are some kind of standards which used to organize your collection. So organizing means actually organizing your collection metadata, but we don't specifically say these are as metadata standards in earlier days. However, as I introduced you earlier, a typical metadata record can be shown as a catalog card. So in that you can find various types of metadata like descriptive metadata like author, publisher, title. Then you have administrative metadata like accession number or call number. So all these things can be found in a library catalog card. So basically we are using this kind of metadata in a library because we want to organize our information in such a way which user can use it easily. So to make resource discovery more efficient and effective, we use metadata and we create various things like catalog cards to give user better access. So that is the main purpose of using metadata in libraries. So this is about the conventional libraries. Then after like few decades ago, so the involvement starts in 1990s in UK and USA. You can see various agencies, organizations, and also some research and development started at that time. So that is actually the beginning of digital libraries. The reasons for this is, you know, within can you hear me now?
Yes, madam.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am. We can hear.
sorry about the interruption. With the rapid expansion of technology and digital resources, the need of digital libraries has emerged. So, you know, with during past few decades, there's a huge number of digital resources created and libraries wanted to incorporate these digital resources into their collection and give users better services. So that is one need. And also libraries always wanted to give better access to their users. Therefore, they need to give distributed access to information resources. That is also another reason for emerging digital libraries. Then e-publishing has occurred, and then we have e-research. These days we are mostly considering about distance learning and independent learning or blended learning sometimes. So as libraries, we are trying to cater these services to the users, especially the university sector and so on. So in that case, we should have some kind of digital library platform. So these are the main reasons. And let's see the definition of digital library. So simply a digital library is a set of electronic resources associated with technical capabilities for creating, searching, and using information. So that is a very brief definition, but many people describe this in different ways. So I put IFLA definition here because it has this wording. Actually, it says collection created or collected and managed with internationally accepted principle. That is really important because you cannot just create a digital library as you want. You need some kind of standard for that. So here, internationally accepted principles mean some kind of standard, and they are basically the metadata standards and other data standards. So we have identified what is metadata, and but what is a standard? So standard is basically a set of metadata designed for a specific purpose. So these set of metadata terms are properly designed and specified in a document. So this can be identified as a standard. So most of the standards are created based on different subject domains. And there are standards like vocabularies, models, metadata models, and metadata schemas. Likewise, there are so many standards types. So the metadata standard basically support to describe a digital object. Unlike physical object, digital objects are a bit heterogeneous, and they need a proper mechanism to describe and capture the information in the digital object. So you need a proper way to handle it. And also they give it gives you to identify, locate, and retrieve resources effectively. And also, if you use a standard, you can link your data with other data providers. And when you are linking, it gives another advantage. If you link, a certain organization don't need to reuse whatever every day. Even we are doing it. If we are not linked among our institutions, we always create new records. So if we link, we don't need to create new things from the scratch, but we can reuse what they have provided. So that is called data reusable. Then also it manages data preservation like that. And also it helps data migration. If you want to migrate your data to another system, simply you must have a metadata standard, otherwise you are in trouble, right? So likewise, it supports in various ways. So I thought of showing you this visualization related to the metadata universe actually. So this metadata visualization is based on the domain and community. You can see two ovals, but this is not so clear, but you can follow this link and find more details. One is for domain and community, one is for function and the purpose. So library lies under community because it's a service. So in the library section, you can see there are so many standards. So as I explained earlier, DDC and then some other AACR and all these things are categorized as some kind of standard in the metadata universe. So Likewise, you have several standards related to libraries. So this is basically for digital libraries. And some conventional libraries also can use some of the standards. So this diagram is kind of like 10 years back. It's created 10 years back, so you have to be careful. But still you can get an idea about the existing standards. So let's get back to our topic actually. Just a second. In this webinar, I'm not going to talk all the standards. It's not possible within 30 minutes. So I would like to introduce a few standards only. First one is MARC, Machine Readable Cataloging. I think most of you know what is MARC. And most of the time, most of the library management systems are using MARC. For example, like Poha library management system, Evergreen, and some other Sublime. Likewise, several library management tools are using MARC in their system. So MARC is a format, digital format for description of items cataloged by libraries. So it is mainly created for library resources. And this is developed by Library of Congress in 1960. So it's a pretty old data standard. And in 1971, MARC format had become US national standard for dissemination of bibliographical information. Then in 1991, there was a harmonization between MARC and MARC US and MARC Canada. So this harmonization creates the MARC 21, which we are using now in most of our libraries. Then IFLA created another MARC series called UniMARC or Universal MARC, and it is widely used in Europe. Then another advancement is MARC XML. So MARC XML is XML-based common MARC schema. So that is also a really good one. And finally, we have BibFrame. Probably you have heard of BibFrame. BibFrame is called Bibliographic Framework. And this is kind of replacement to MARC format. Because day by day technology change, resources change, so sometimes standards also change. So one example is this. And also, you know, AACR was replaced by RDA. So likewise, there are replacements. But still we are using MARC 21 and in most of our libraries. So this comparison is between Library of Congress record and a OCLC record. OCLC stands for Online Computer Library Center. So, so both of them have same resource, and they are trying to describe it using MARC format. So here you can find similar tags, like for number 10 is for the control number given by the institution. Then 100 is for author, 260 is for publisher. Likewise, you can make a connection, link. So because each and every tag are specified for a certain field, so there's no problem. So you can, if you want to link these things, you can do it without any trouble. But on the other hand, if you think that you don't have any standard, this linking becomes very complex because you have to map the fields manually. So that is a problem if you are not using a data standard for your digital library. So this is only a one example. Then we have Dublin Core, which is another common standard. Dublin Core was created in 1995, and Dublin core elements consist of 15 elements, and they address most of basic, descriptive, administrative, and technical elements required to describe a digital object. So this is not only for libraries that you have to remember. So in 15 elements, you can find all the elements like title, subject, contributor, like that. And they are the core elements. So everything is based on that. Then later DCMI, Dublin Core Metadata Initiatives, they introduced Dublin Core qualifiers to give some more meaning to these core elements actually. And other than that, DC has some other initiatives like Dublin Core application profile, which gives some set of documents to describe metadata in application. So this application profile can be used in whatever your it is adjustable for whatever the metadata you are using in your project. So likewise, they have these various kind of projects and initiatives. So that is one example. Then we have another one, metadata encoding and transmission standard, METS. So when you read that name, you can understand it is not only about describing your digital object, it is also about transmitting your digital object. So that is the that is what METS doing. So METS is maintained as a part of MARC standard and of Library of Congress. And also it is developed by LC and Digital Library Federation. And it's a flexible mechanism for encoding descriptive, administrative, and structural metadata for a library project and for expressing the complex links between various metadata in the digital library. And also MEX is created upon XML. XML means Extensible Markup Language, created by W3C, World Wide Web Consortium. So this MEX expressed using XML format for encoding metadata necessary for both management of digital library object within a repository and exchange of such objects between repositories. So it works vice versa. And MEX create profiles. So these profiles can be identified as a package actually. So if you go to the MEX model, you can find this package or the elements. They have 7 elements. Each elements can be described like this, like header, then descriptive metadata, administrative, file section. Likewise, I'm not going to explain each and every one because we don't have much time. So, so likewise, you have 7 elements which can be used to describe a document in a packaged manner. So that is the that is METS. Then we have premise model. Premise is a different model because it is considering about preservation of metadata in your digital library. So preservation, metadata, implementation, then OCLC and Research Library Group created this in 2003. The aim is to define a core set of preservation metadata elements which could be applied broadly across preservation community and to examine a number of practical application issues, because previously people didn't think much about this preservation, but with premise model and some other models now people are thinking about preserving the data, because when it comes to digital library, this preservation is very problematic and it is a crucial point. And premise also using XML schema, which is very flexible. And premise data model is built upon Open Archival Information System, OAIS reference model. So this is the premise model. Actually, it's very simple, but it has some entities like rights, statements, agent, object, even likewise, they describe it. So I'm not going to explain each and every one. Then I would like to introduce Open Archives initiatives. Now earlier I said Open Archive Information System, so don't get OAIS, so don't mix up it with OAI, Open Archives. Those are two things. So please search it and see. So OAI, or Open Archives Initiative, is an informal association created by a group of developers. So it is not an organization, it's just some created by some developers. This was initiated in 1990s, and their aim was to build low barrier interoperability framework for institution repositories containing digital content to allow people to harvest metadata. So their intention is totally different. So harvesting is also really harvesting and giving some value to that data, and also and then offering it to other third parties is happening these days all the time. So when you harvest and refine your data and provide it again, that means it's a value addition to your data, and anybody can reuse that data. So for this harvesting process, they have introduced a technical structure called OAI PMH. So OAI stands for Open Archives Initiatives. Then PMH is Protocol for Metadata Harvesting. So that is the technique they are using in their model. Then we have OAI ORE, that is another standard defined by this OAI group. ORE stands for Object Reuse and Exchange. So this standard is for the description and exchange of aggregations of web resources. Number of metadata standards created based on various purposes. So these standards can be used in library and maybe some other domains as well. So, so these are some of the examples only. Then we have another thing. So this is actually my final presentation slide. Which metadata should we use? Now we have seen various metadata stands. So somebody might think, okay, which one I should use for my digital library project? So we cannot specifically say, okay, this standard is suitable for this one. That depends on your purpose and requirement. So before choosing a metadata standard, you should consider and examine all different vocabulary, standards, schemas available, and also things, projects, ongoing and past projects. And then only you have to decide what is best suited for your project. And also, sometimes all international metadata schemas you cannot use in your project. For example, think that you are doing a digital library project related to a indigenous knowledge organization or cultural heritage stuff. So they are very unique to your country or your region. So sometimes you can fully can't incorporate international standard into those kind of digital library. So in that case, you have to be very careful, and you have to modify the fields of that standard and have it in your project in a refined way. So, but somehow this kind of modification should be done with proper knowledge, right? And then when it comes to digital library, interoperability is also very vital, because if you cannot transfer your data between repositories, that becomes absolute. So first you think about this interoperability as well. So on the other hand, long-term preservation of metadata is another crucial point, because you are creating a digital library not only for a few years. So it should be maintained and preserved for long run. So if you think like that, you can go for a better digital library with proper metadata standards. So this is the end of my presentation today. I think you may have questions or maybe some comments. So please feel free to contact me via my email address. And again, thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful theme address. I now request our second theme speaker, Dr. Shalini R. Aras, founder and chairperson, MYRA School of Business, Mysore, India, to enlighten us on the topic, Knowledge Organization Standards for the Semantic Web. For the next 20 to 25 minutes, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. At the outset, I would like to thank the Seshadripuram Evening College and especially Principal Professor Satish and also Yogananda for giving me this opportunity to speak about what I'm going to speak about today is knowledge organization systems and their standards. Give me just 1 second to share my screen.
Okay. Yes, madam, we can see now.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be, in a way, it's a continuation of what Chiranthi was talking about as metadata standards, because in one sense, you would have seen in her presentation, she was talking about not just one type of metadata standard. She also mentioned about DDC and various other standards, which includes, in one sense, knowledge organization standards. But what I'm going to be speaking is specifically only a knowledge organization, and especially in the context of semantic web. Well, before we go into this, let me just take you through what I'm going to cover in the next half an hour or so. First and foremost, I'm going to be talking about, in general, about how important order and structure is to all of us, because you will see order and structure in our lives, in everything that we do. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on for the first few minutes. And then I'll come to the topic of what is knowledge organization, and then to knowledge organization systems. And then of course, move on to semantic web and ontologies. And hopefully if I have some time, I'm going to be even presenting you some of the work that I have done in this. That is, we have developed some ontologies before I conclude my talk. So this is going to be my agenda. Hopefully I will be able to cover much of it during the next half an hour. As I was mentioning in the beginning, the organization part, or what we call as the order, is central to our lives. Because there are so many things around us, and there are so many developments that have taken place, which in a way tell us how important order is, or what, the order in a particular domain or in a particular area of expertise, how it actually transformed the field. Whether it is in the field of natural laws, I'm also going to be talking about, for example, one of our, roughly about 2,500 years back, how grammarian Panini and his rules for Sanskrit grammar, even though he developed it primarily for Sanskrit, how it transformed our understanding of how language works. Then we are particularly students here probably are familiar with Linne's taxonomy in life sciences. Similarly, chemistry, there is periodic table of Mendeleev and others. So this is giving you a sense of, how important structure or order is, or the discovery of structure and order has actually transformed. First, I'll begin with one of the very famous statement known as order is heaven's first law, to emphasize on how important order is. This was actually mentioned, this statement, you can call it as enigma, epigram, was given by Alexander Pope, who is a poet and a satirist belonging to the 17th and the 18th century. So this he wrote it in his famous book called An Essay on Man. So while talking about Essay on Man in this book, he used this order is heaven's first law and his view of the universe. So what he said is, no matter how imperfect, how complex, how inscrutable and disturbing the universe may be, see, when we see around us, we think that there is chaos everywhere. There is disorderliness. However, he says behind it, there is rationality and there is order. And these are all primarily natural laws. Okay? So according to him, universe as a whole is a perfect work of God, though the humans may think that there is evil, there is this, etc., which is not necessarily explaining some of the evils that we see. But what is important here is about orderliness. So there is some kind of an order wherever you go. Now I will come to the example of Panini, which I mentioned. See, Panini is considered as the father of linguistics. Why? Because he gave a formal production rules and definitions to describe Sanskrit grammar. But the importance lies not just in Sanskrit grammar. As I said, he was a linguist. He is considered as father of linguists because in his book, Ashtadhyayi, this Ashtadhyayi consists of 8 chapters and each chapter is subdivided into quarter chapters with about 1700 basic elements like nouns, verbs, vowels, consonants. He put them into classes. So you can see that basically, particularly those who come from the library and information science background are familiar with the kind of I would say commonality and overlap between language, linguistics and classification. Okay, because many of these things have come from language and linguistics. So Panini's contribution to not just for grammar, not just for Sanskrit, but to entire world. For example, the other day I was reading one of the books by Nobel laureate Amartya Sen. He talks about how Panini influenced the bringing order to economics, that is classification of economics, how important was his contribution. So that's why I'm mentioning Panini here, because Panini brought this idea of structure to language. That is the main contribution of Panini, I would say. So, and another interesting thing is, all of you know that mathematics is primarily the structural language, right? So while in the West, the Western mathematics, it comes from the tradition of logic, etc. Whereas the Indian mathematics, it comes from the tradition of language. That is primarily because of the fact that Panini gave structure to language and that influenced our algebraic thinking. So while mathematics grew out of philosophy in ancient Greece, as I said, logic and philosophy in Greece, it was partly an outcome of linguistic development in India because of the fact that he was able to bring structure to language. That is, Panini was able to bring structure to language. So what I'm trying to do here is the ubiquity of structure. Everything in the natural world has structure, from very small, like the carbon-60 molecule, to the very large, such as the mountains and indeed the whole universe. You will find that there is structure. So structure is the connecting of parts to make a whole, and it occurs at various levels. See, this is a cactus here. Don't you see structure here? There is so much structure there, right? It's natural order. See here, this is another example of how structure is around us. This is another example. See the beauty of the structure of these leaves here. So there is structure everywhere. This is also structure. See how beautifully the structure is done. This is another example of structure. So if you look around, you will find that everywhere there is structure. See the beauty of our lungs. You can see the structure here, right? So that is what we are emphasizing on here. That is, structure is around us, substructure is ubiquitous, and substructure is omnipresent. So another example is that of the periodic table, the roadmap to the universe. Okay, I suppose all of you are familiar with this particular picture of the periodic table. See, periodic table, what did it do? It brought structure. Until then, it was not that there were no developments in chemistry. Progress was made in chemistry. But Dmitry Mendeleev, the Russian chemist, when he developed this, of course, there were, before him also, there are many progenitors, but Dmitry Mendeleev was the one who brought periodic table. But this is known as the building blocks of the universe. So that's another example of how structure is behind the universe. Any universe you take, whether you take the universe of chemical elements or compounds, etc., or others, you will find that there is structure behind it. And the beauty of this Mendeleev's table is that even before the discovery of electrons, he was able to do this. And what you see here, it's essentially organization, right? Organization and order, structure. Okay. So the genius of this tabular display of elements is that table based on atomic weights could predict interactions before elements. So one advantage or the benefit of structure is it brings orderliness. It also helps you to predict, as it happened with chemical element, that is Mendeleev's table, there were many blanks, but they got filled up later. Okay. So that is why Mendeleev's table is considered to be one of the important discoveries or developments in history of science itself. Then the other one, Carl Linnaeus. He was a Swedish botanist, this is Linnaeus, who again transformed life sciences, or against botany. What did he do? He was a taxonomist, and he developed a classification for this. Until then, there was no order in the understanding of animals or organisms, I would say. And he wrote this in the year 1738 in a book called Systema Naturae. This is the book that he wrote. And this was the first time that they were able to bring order into the world of organisms, classification of organisms. So you can see how this organism, from life, how it starts with species, genus, family, etc. This is what is the advantage of structure. This is another example of classification or orderliness, or you can call it as structure. Okay. So that is the reason why civilization or mankind, you can say, we're always seeking and constructing structure. Either we find structures in the universe or we are constructing structure. Because structure is everything when it comes to understanding any phenomena, whether they are natural phenomena or social phenomena. Structure is important, and that is why either it is there, we discover the structure, or we build the structure. So this is why we are talking about knowledge organization system. Let us come to now our specific topic of how do we organize knowledge. My idea of bringing this up here was that you have to understand organizing knowledge or bringing orderliness to knowledge is something that is connected, that is innate to any subject or any field for that matter. So we need to classify. Similarly, in the field of library information science, we have always tried to develop some systems for organizing knowledge. So the term knowledge organization system, it encompasses all types of schemes for organizing that help knowledge management. Because we are in the business of managing this knowledge. So in order to manage this knowledge, we need to develop schemes, we need to develop systems which help us manage this. So basically, that's how the field of libraries, library information management, you can, or other institutions, for example, you would have, she did not speak much about it, but she was also speaking about, Chiranthi was speaking about metadata standards for cultural objects, which are primarily for the museums, right? So they are not generally only for libraries, but any memory institution such as library, museum, archive, that's why KOS, that is knowledge organization systems, are at the heart of all of these organizations. And when we say KOS or knowledge organization system, it includes classification schemes that we use, as you can see here. See, all of you are familiar with the way in which books are placed orderly in a particular shelf, etc., with these class numbers. This is one system of knowledge organization. Maybe your library follows the Dewey Decimal Classification scheme or some other classification scheme. but some classification scheme or the other is used to organize or arrange books on the shelves. And then there are what is called a subject heading lists. Chiranthi was showing some of the subject headings within her catalog entry. If you have seen, the catalog entry had subject keywords. How do you get these keywords? These keywords, there has to be standard again for that. And the standards are, what I have shown here is, for example, one of the very well-known standard of keywords is the Library of Congress subject heading list, that is LCSJ as it's known as. So LCSJ, that is Library of Congress subject heading list, is one of the standard terms list which is used in many libraries. And in addition to these, they also include, for example, geographic names and personal names, because you need to have standard names. See, today, for example, when it comes to names of people or article authors, etc., you need to have a standard name, because names can be in variant forms of names could be there. That's why whether it is for geography, you can see here, geography in this slide I have shown here, one of the United Nations attempt to make standard geographical names, because geographical names are vital keys for accessing information in our globalized and digital world. So they have to be standardized again. So this is another example. There are various examples or attempts that are being made to standardize names of things. It could be names of people, it could be names of geographical spaces or anything. And for that purpose, we use one or the other knowledge organization system. And now in the current modern day world, we also use what is called as semantic networks and ontologies. I'll come to that to explain what is an ontology or what is a semantic network. So classification of the knowledge organization systems, we make a taxonomy of that. As you can see here, it starts with what is called as term list. Term list could be authority list, glossaries. We see that this is for example, this is an example of a gazetteer for Karnataka. Okay, I have taken it from the gazetteer of, as you can see, district gazetteer. Click on the map to get the respective district gazetteer. So each district will have a gazetteer for the names of the places in that. Okay, and then similarly you have other kinds of authority lists. Okay, so you have authority lists, you have, for example, specialized glossaries, that is terms used in, for example, medicine. So subject headings which are used only in medicine. These are some examples. Okay, then for example, a dictionary is also an example of an authority list, right? We always say according to this dictionary, this is the meaning of the term, because a term could have different meanings or slightly varying meanings. So in order to standardize the meaning, that in what sense or what is the meaning that we are using, we say according to this dictionary, this is the meaning of this term. So in that sense, a dictionary or a general glossary is also an example of a knowledge organization system. This is one example of a ontology, gene ontology. As you can see here, it gives a structure and a classification of gene. Say molecular function, cellular component, biological process, etc. Then it goes to the level of, see here, cytoplasm. Okay, DNA repair. So this is an example of ontology. Okay, so these are some examples of, as I said, different classes of knowledge organization system or categories of knowledge organization system. Thesauri is one of them. At least some people from the library and information science world are familiar with this standard list called the MESH, that is medical subject head. Previously, I was talking about the Library of Congress subject heading list, which is a generic one, that is for all subjects. For the entire universe of knowledge, the Library of Congress has developed a subject heading list known as the LCH. Now, in the field of medicine, National Library of Medicine has developed what is known as the MESH. That was, that was developed somewhere in the 1960s. But even today, it is being used not just for subject headings, but to develop the ontology. See, this is an example of a sample of an ontology based on the medical subject heading. Okay, You can see here digestive system that is divided into this. See, you can see the connection. Neoplasms. Neoplasms is, the cancerous or the growth, okay? Neoplasms by site. So then the site comes to this digestive system. Then gastrointestinal neoplasm, then stomach neoplasm. So this is how an ontology is built using the traditional medical subject heading list. So the main thing here is, why I am showing this is that in a thesauri, as different from a glossary, glossary is one type of a knowledge organization system, but glossary is limited to only giving you the meanings and equivalence terms. For example, what is the meaning of this? What are the equivalent terms? But a thesauri is the next level. In what sense is it the next level? Because as you can see here, a thesauri gives 3 standard relationships between concepts: equivalence, hierarchical, and associative. So you can see in this example, this is a hierarchical relation. Which one? Digestive system, gastrointestinal diseases, etc. When it comes to this, is an association between growth, that is cancer, and then a particular organ. So that is why, in order to do this thesauri, which is the next level in the knowledge organization system, you need first, you have a vocabulary, that is a standard vocabulary as it is known as, and then you go to the next level with concept definitions and warrant. So that is the scope notes, what that means, what is it equivalent for, what is the associated term. So again, those of you who are familiar with the library and information science field, you have at least some of you would have used CS list, etc., which is also a simple example of a knowledge organization system limited only to terms. But the next level is the thesauri, as I mentioned earlier. Mesh is an example of a thesauri. Similarly, for example, in agriculture, you have what is called as agrovac. This mesh, that is medical subject heading list, is developed, as I mentioned earlier, the National Library of Medicine. Agrovac is developed by FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. So this is a vocabulary like the mesh, okay, for the field of agriculture. And as you can see, next level is this. Agrovac has these kinds of relationships. Relationships, as you can see here, hopefully you can see here, okay. Here you have various, tomato, corn, etc. That is the specific ones. Then it also, you can see here in this particular part of this slide, how agrovac is also relating the terminology, etc. to other ontologies. That is the next step. That is higher level of conceptualization, wherein you are trying to relate it with other ontology, that is Eurovac, for example, LCHS, etc. So there are attempts to develop ontologies built connecting other ontologies. So that is how the hierarchy, or you can say the classification of knowledge organization system has evolved. So higher ontologies become wherein you connect various things. So KOS, that is knowledge organization system, you can say includes all these, that is ontologies and schemas. See, for example, you can see here, same from the agrovac, how it is related to various ontologies. And there are, as I mentioned, various standards for this. So there, I will not dwell too much on this because this only has numbers and etc. Various organization standards or bodies are involved in developing this. But the primary thing here is about how do we enrich? How do we develop? You have a question? Somebody has raised the hand. Ashish Kumar Jha has raised the hand. Is there a question?
No, madam. We will address later, madam.
Okay. So enriching or formalizing the knowledge organization system. These are the next level. Once you have the vocabularies, once you have the ontologies, how do we enrich them? How do you formalize them becomes the next level in the knowledge organization system. I mentioned only one aspect of that here, what is known as the facet analysis techniques relevant for this purpose. Why I'm mentioning facet analysis is that particularly in India, we should be very proud of the fact that facet analysis, or what is known as the analytico-synthetic approaches, was developed by the father of library science in India, that is Dr. S.R. Ranganathan, which is accepted now universally around the world, and not only in the field of library information science, but across, because as you know, ontologies are not limited to library science, but now they have moved on to semantic web, which is part of the computer science field. So they are also looking at, adopting faceted techniques, you can call them as, our facet analysis approach, okay, wherein you are combining the facets, okay. So facet analysis, say in the UK, they also had a classification research group which extended the impact and reach and influence of Ranganathan's facet analysis. So this is just to give an example of how one can, this work is continuing and it is expanding to various ways of enriching the knowledge organization system. So the important thing is the foundational concepts and relations to ontology, similar to fundamental categories. So the point what I'm trying to highlight here is, when we say ontologies, see, one problem that most people have is, is it similar to classification? I would say yes and no. Why? Because yes, it is similar, but then it is much expansive than classification. Is it similar to glossary? Yes and no. Why? Because it is similar up to a point, like a glossary. See, that's why I gave the example of mesh. Mesh has been there, that is medical subject heading has been there since almost 50, 60 years. That doesn't mean that things haven't changed. Built on this mesh, there are these now ontologies and knowledge organization system. And the next level is what is known as the automatic generalization or generation of these kinds of things, okay? So I'll move from that aspect of facet analysis as an approach to enriching the quality and expanding the knowledge organization system, such as ontologies, etc., and come to the semantic web part of it. Before we go to semantic web, it's important for us to consider the web first, right? So web, that is the World Wide Web. See, it's a veritable treasure trove of information. Everybody agrees that. Anything you want to know, well, you Google it, you will find the information. Correct? Yes, you do. But despite the fact that it is a veritable treasure trove of information, one of the limitations, the primary limitation of the web today is it consists of unstructured textual information. And because the information is unstructured, our ability to discover knowledge, remember we are talking about knowledge organization, because end of the day, ultimately, everybody wants knowledge, not just information. Information is one of the steps towards acquiring knowledge. So how do you get knowledge out of this information? It's primarily through developing this or integrating knowledge organization systems into the web of today. And that is done through what is known as semantic web. So semantic web, you can see this when I say it's a limitation, unstructured textual information. So what is missing is structure. Structure to the information. If you are familiar, I'm sure everyone uses the Wikipedia for most of the information that they want to look up, right? Like any encyclopedia. But if you observe in the Wikipedia, usually there are two sections. One is on the left-hand side, you will find all the details, etc., in a narrative form, like a textual form. On the right-hand side, you will observe there is what is called as the info box. Info box, in one sense, is structured information. It's structured data about that particular concept that you are looking at. So they are trying to bring in structure into the unstructured information in Wikipedia through these info boxes. So, I'm just trying to give you an example of how you need to bring in structure in order to be able to actually get more out of the unstructured information. So that is how, in fact, everybody probably knows that Tim Berners-Lee is the person who developed or who invented, you can say, the World Wide Web. So he, as early as about 20 years back, that is in the year 2001 itself, he said that we need to be developing or moving beyond the web or the World Wide Web to semantic web. So he proposed semantic web in 2001, and this requires storing data on the web in a form that is not only comprehensible by humans, but also machine interpretable. That is the main thing here. Because when we see that information on the web, well, for human beings, it is interpretable, it is understandable, it is knowledge, but it is not knowledge to computers, because all that is happening behind the web is done through the computer or through the software. So for the software to understand and get you information or knowledge, you need to have structure to this data. So that is why Tim Berners-Lee proposed, and then he has been asking everybody to develop the next level of the web, what is called as the semantic web. Okay, what is needed for semantic web is this: for data to be machine interpretable, its context and meaning. See, semantics essentially, the word semantic essentially means meaning. So meaning also has to be present somewhere there. Okay, so that is why to realize the full potential of the World Wide Web, semantic web and knowledge organizing systems are considered to be essential requirement. So that is how I'm bringing the KOS to the semantic web and the utility of the web itself. So today you are seeking information, otherwise how are you getting you are using keyword searches in Google or Semantic Scholar also. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Semantic Scholar. Semantic Scholar is one other search engine for particularly scholarly and other information that you want to use, which has a built-in semantic web in it. So you can try out and see how it shows the semantics, that is the meaning and this kind of a other organization behind it. So Semantic Scholar, you can call that as one step towards the semantic web. Okay. So search engines such as Google, but Google is simple now. Google is also moving towards the semantic web, primarily through its association with Wikipedia and Wikidata, and it has what is called as a knowledge graph. That is semantic. In order to move towards semantic web, Google uses or has developed what is known as knowledge graph. Knowledge graph is another example of a KOS. Okay, so that's also trying to move towards that. So some of these disadvantages or limitations that I have mentioned here are still limitations, but efforts are going on in order to improve them and move towards the semantic web. Okay, just to give you an idea of, see, this is what the web is, or web technology is. I suppose many of you are familiar. The common language that is used for web pages is the HTML, that is what is known as the hypertext markup language. So in the HTML markup language, see, you have there is a link between one resource and the other resource, and that link is established through a href link, as it is called. I will not go into the details of that. This is how one web page to another web page, the link happens through what is called as the href. Okay, so this is how information accessing is happening, and these are based primarily content links. Okay, so since these limitations exist, keyword search techniques, they do not capture or capitalize on this, etc. We need to move beyond this, as I mentioned earlier. So what we are trying to do is, in order to overcome, basically for want of time, I am already, behind schedule in my own slide deck. So one of the approaches that is used in the semantic web is what is called as the NLP, or the natural language processing. Natural language processing uses the connection or the language syntax and then develops the semantic web. As you can see here, metadata is here, subject vocabularies are. So simple metadata standards and subject vocabularies have not proved to be that effective in bringing about this change into a semantic web. That's why we have moved to the next level, what is known as the natural language processing techniques. Okay, so basically what we are trying to do is merge the techniques of ontology, that is, knowledge organization system, and the techniques of machine learning, etc., and bring about this transformation in our semantic web. Okay. So the question is, for all these limitations, is semantic web the solution? Most people think yes. This is, as you can see here, this was supposedly be reaching. We should have reached the semantic web stage in 2015. Have we reached that stage? Maybe partially, but not fully. Okay, that's why I've shown this. So basically, semantic web has all this: automation of information retrieval, Internet of Things, and in a way, personal assistance. So you are familiar with some of the personal assistant that people are using. I don't know how many of you use Apple Siri or even personal assistants such as Alexa, etc. at home. Okay, Alexa is supposedly a personal assistant. Google also has a personal assistant. So these are all based on what is called as the overall semantic, the umbrella of the semantic web technologies. Okay. So another way of looking at where are we when it comes to semantic web is this. See, first we began with Web 1.0. Web 1.0 started some like 25 years back, and somewhere in 1990s, let us say. I mean, the public web as it is known as, somewhere in 1994. For example, Chiranthi mentioned about the digital libraries. The first digital library initiative started in 1994 with the federal government funding for digital library. I do not know how many of you know this. See, Google, which everybody uses today, was in a way spin-off or a byproduct of the Digital Library Initiative 1. See, in Digital Library Initiative 1, when the US government gave, I think it was about $24 million for 6 universities to develop the digital libraries, one project went to the Stanford University. And in the Stanford University, the database group had this project, and then Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, they were working there as PhD research scholars in the Stanford University. And as part of the digital library project, they were asked to develop, rather index the entire web. So they started indexing that at that time, whatever number of web pages that were available. And when they started indexing, that's how they were able to develop the Google. Of course, they did not complete their PhD. I mean, they don't want to spend time in developing or rather finishing their PhD. They went on to become super rich people by starting the Google. Anyway, the point I'm trying to say here is the connection between Google, connection between knowledge organization system, and then digital libraries, and then the web itself. Okay, so the Web 1.0 was primarily formalization of standards such as HTML and XML. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. Chiranthi also mentioned about in a couple of slides about XML for metadata standards. The reason why XML is also being developed or talked about is XML is the one which is expected to bring that semantics to the markup language. Because with the help of XML, Extensible Markup Language, we can add that layer of semantics to the web pages. That is Web 1.0. Web 2.0 was primarily the development of what is known as the two-way communication web. What you see in case of, for example, social networking sites, social media, etc., wherein it's not a one-way communication, but a two-way communication. So as you know, somewhere around 2005, 6, etc., the Web 2.0 started. And then with that came the two-way communication system, that is user-generated content. People could add comments to it, people could interact with the websites, etc. So that's an example of the Web 2.0. Web 3.0 is what is known as the semantic web. That's the approach. How you make the web readable by machines, bring new meaning and information from connected data. Okay, that's how we are now coming to the what is known as Web 3.0 or the semantic web. Basically, semantic web is expected to revolutionize our web in various ways. And the main way is, for example, represent the web content in, as I mentioned already, a machine readable or understandable form. See, for example, today, if you give, let us say, a word, apple, as a search term to Google, it does not know that apple that you are looking for is whether it is the apple as a fruit or apple as a company. When it is machine interpretable, that is the context. So once you know the context in which you are looking for, then it's able to differentiate between whether you're looking for apple, the fruit, or apple, the company. So that is what the semantic, I mean, very simply put, that is what the semantic web is supposed to bring. Bring intelligence to the web. See, previously you had seen this kind of a web, I mean the connection, which was a HTML page, but now you can see here with the semantic web. Earlier it had only href, which was content links, whereas now you will see that it also says is a version of. That is, it is talking about properties as well as relations. So properties and relations between one document and the other, let us say document is this version of this document, some version of this document, etc. So it's doing next level of relationship. So this is the basic idea. That is, you have content resources. Semantic web brings software agents, accessibility, indexing and information retrieval, and various processes are built into the semantic web. So knowledge organization in conceptual spaces according to its meaning. So this is how it will bring the knowledge organization into the web. That's the idea behind the semantic web. I'll quickly run through because we don't have much time. I think I'm already reaching my deadline of the time. So these are the components of the semantic web. As you can see here, of course, while introducing, somebody mentioned about Unicode. I do not know how many of you are familiar with Unicode. That's another development. I mean, development that happened some 20, 25 years back, because earlier the entire coding behind the computers were ASCII. Because it was, computers were developed in the US, naturally, they thought of only English language, rather the Roman script as the main thing. And that is why it moved from, it was primarily in ASCII, and in the, before, you can say roughly before 2000, it could not handle non-English language material, or it was not interoperable, you can say. But with the development of Unicode, somewhere around 2000, it was possible to bring this kind of a. So I did some work in Unicode. That is, I developed, as it was mentioned, for the Vidyanidhi Digital Library. We were not only having the thesis of, thesis in Indian languages as well as English language. So for primarily Hindi and Kannada, we did implement the Unicode. So it was possible for us to show for the record both, transliterated versions in Kannada as well as in Hindi as well as in English. So Unicode, that is why is at the bottom level. Universal resource indicator, and then this Unicode actually become the base of this semantic web. And then on top of it, you have the XML, which I already mentioned. XML, that is, we go beyond the HTML, you move to extensible markup language. Then comes the resource description framework and resource description schema. You can see here ontology, vocabulary, then you build the logic over that, and then proof and trust, and then you will get the semantic web. Okay, this is an example. As I mentioned earlier, uniform resource identifiers, a global naming scheme. So this is another standard. There has to be a global naming scheme for each of the components. Okay, and then we have now resource description framework. RDF has been developed, which is a standard syntax to describe data. So these are all some examples to tell you how standards are actually moving forward. We are progressing much faster in this area to reach We have not yet reached, mind you, we have not yet reached the stage of semantic web, but we are moving towards it. That's what I'm saying. These are the principal components of the semantic web. So ontologies that use this one example. OWL web ontology language. OWL stands for web ontology language. In fact, in English, it becomes the web ontology language. So OWL is I'm saying it's one of the standards that is developed for developing ontologies. A standard means to describe relationships between data items. So you will see here how these relationships are described, okay? See, for example, when there is I'll skip this because there are so many things that your resource description framework schema is one, which I mentioned, which also includes, which is an extension of semantic extension of the RDF, okay? So this I'll take because this will give you some clarity on this, okay? Because we are dealing with the semantic web. Remember, I mentioned about the relationships, right? Relationships, you can see in this. See, this is Webley Solutions. Let us say this is an organization or a company. So this company has head office in USA, has branch office, let us say in India. Okay. So this universe consists of countries, and these two are showing what is the relationship between Webley Solutions and USA and Webley Solutions and India. It's not just giving connection between the two. It says has main office or head office in USA, has branch office in India. And similarly, for example, it is also showing the relationship, such as has the employee Smith or, for example, Bob. These are the people. So countries, people, and then the organization. So these are employees. So the relationship between, for example, Webley Solutions and Smith is that of a employee and employer relation. The relationship between Webley Solution and USA is it has its head office. The relationship between Webley Solutions and India is that it has a branch office. Okay, so that is what the essence of ontology is. Ontologies describe, that's what I said, describe relationships between data items. So imagine the work that is involved in these kinds of building ontologies. So that is where, I mean, today there are lots of things that are happening, but together we have not been able to reach that stage, primarily because there are too many ontologies, number one, and also it's not that easy to develop universally applicable ontology. So we are somewhere there, middleware are being developed. So this one example, as I said, one of the projects that I did was about developing this ontology-based knowledge management systems. So I'm going to just briefly mention this. We used what is known as the description logics and developed the ontology using the OWL language. That was our approach. Okay. So I'll show you here in a very simple manner how this is done. So we used only agricultural documents as a chosen domain because remember, as I said, we cannot develop this in a very big way in a short span of time. So we chose the field of agriculture, and we already, as I mentioned earlier, you already have the AgroVac, which is a vocabulary, standard vocabulary for agriculture. We use that and then develop this skill. This is just to give you an idea, you know. And as I said, my project Vidyanidhi was an electronic thesis and dissertation project. So here you have this metadata relating to this is the resource description, okay? What is the title, who is the contributor, who is the supervisor, year, etc., etc. And then here you have agriculture, crops. I mean, this is the classification scheme or the knowledge organization that has happened, okay? So this is, I mean, they're slightly technical here. This is how it is developed, okay? So this is one way of developing. I'll just quickly run through this. Why I'm mentioning this is so that you are familiar with what kind of standards as tools that are available for ontology markup languages, okay? Which I already mentioned. OWL, that is Web Ontology Language, is one of the standard languages that are available by the W3C, which is, as you, I suppose all of you know, W3 is the World Wide Web Consortium, which sets the standards for the World Wide Web. So World Wide Web Consortium has developed this OWL, which is one of the standard standard ontology language. And there was another one called the correlative ontology, which is also another example of a standard. So we have tested with both of them to see how it works. Okay. So I'll just give you one, this is the way we have to see here. Has crop scientific name, agricultural crop. What is the name of that? Pest. So this is the relationship that an ontology brings into the document. So as you can see, the relationships are important in developing an ontology. This is another, I mean, I'm sure you cannot see this, but just to give you a sense of how it works. Primarily only for the disease pests. Okay. I'm just trying to give you a sense of how the ontology works. I'm sure you cannot see much of it, or you cannot see, we cannot make out, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of how the ontology works as a knowledge organization system. And this is the architecture of the OWL ontology that we had used. These are the three layers: data layer, business logic layer, and presentation layer. Okay. This is the how it can be done in the. So this is a screenshot of what we had done. So I'm just giving you a flavor, as I mentioned. I cannot, this is the concept hierarchy. See, sorghum, diseases, publisher, these are the various kinds of things that we had used. Okay. So I'll come to the end of my talk. That is, ontology-based tools look promising. They look promising and enhance search experience. That is what our experience is. It's promising, and not only my experience or our project experience, but the worldwide, there are examples of projects which are using the ontologies to enhance the search experience as well as to make it more meaningful. What we have not yet reached is a globally accepted ontology which is being used. As I said, companies such as Google are managing to develop what is known as its knowledge graph, which hopefully reaches that stage of a semantic web somewhere in the, I would say, near future. Okay. So that's all I have to say. I'm sorry for rushing through some of this. I hope I had given you a flavor of what is a knowledge organization system, why it is important, and how ontologies fit into this knowledge organization system in organizing everything for that matter. But my focus was primarily on digital libraries, or you can say in the context of information and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful theme address. Now the floor is open for interactions. We will take up questions which we have received from chat box and registration forms. I now request Vinay Sagar sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, to moderate the interaction session. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sumak, and very good evening to all the dignitaries on this evening. My first question is to our speaker, Chiranthi ma'am. Ma'am, can I go with the question? Ma'am, could you please?
Sure, yes.
Ma'am, what kind of technological advancement do you expect for a digital library?
Yeah. So basically, we have to think of creating data. In that case, we have various metadata standards, which I have introduced you, some of them. So you can use one of them basically. So it depends on your purpose actually. So it can be a bibliographical digital library, or it can be a cultural heritage institution digital library, which is totally different from bibliographical stuff, or it can be archive or museum thing. So for all these things, we have different metadata standards. For example, like for cultural heritage institutions, you have other standards like CDOC-CRM, and then CDWA is another standard called categories for description of works of art. So likewise, you have to create it based on your purpose. So that is the main thing. And also that is about creating your data. And when it comes to disseminating and integrating your repositories with other institutions, you have to think about other metadata standards, which I have mentioned earlier, like METS or some other metadata standard. And in long run, you have to think about preservation metadata as well. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, and next question is, ma'am, what are pros and cons of digital library, ma'am?
So basically, we have many advantages as I see. For example, these days, we cannot go to a library with this pandemic situation. So all are going after digital resources. So from home, we have to work and we have to give our services best to our users. So sometimes it's really hard, but still we are managing it as a librarian. We are managing it through our digital library services in our library, like repository, and then also other things like digital publications, which we have e-resources and all. So likewise, it gives a lot of advantages. And on the other hand, people can access our information from remote locations, which is another big advantage. And also you can reuse whatever the data if the repositories are connected. So these things are the main advantages, I think. And when it comes to physical library, that the setting is totally different. So sometimes we cannot do this sharing information, but still when you go to a library, a physical library, and when you read a book, that experience is totally different than digital library, I think. That is my personal experience, actually. So, but in a rapidly developing world, I think we should think about digital libraries rather than going for physical libraries. That is my personal opinion, actually.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for answering our questions. My next question is to Shalini, ma'am. Ma'am, can I go with?
Sure.
Ma'am, where is the place of the library in NEP 2020, ma'am?
Okay, when it comes to NEP, I do not know how many of you have read the entire thing. Okay, I would say, even though it's not about explicitly mentioning the role of libraries in the new education policy, but the change that has been envisaged, change as in change in the education system. If you observe, it talks about flexibility, it talks about, for example, sort of breaking through the barriers of disciplines, etc. And also talks about innovation and all that, which is essentially, in my view, primarily the NEP brings some of the, I would say, good features of the Western education system into Indian education system. Because Indian education system was too rigid and structured in one way. Of course, I have been talking about how important structure it is, but now I'm saying too rigid it is. So that's why we did not have some of the good features of the Western education system, where it is learner-centric. So we are moving from teacher-centric to learner-centric. That is one thing that I can say as per the NEP. And when you move from teacher-centric to learner-centric, what does it mean? Learner has the freedom to choose different things, whether choose the combination one wants, choose what he or she wants to expand on, etc. So in that context, libraries play a crucial role. In fact, that's why if you go to, for example, US or any other Western country, children are very, very familiar. Today, in our country, Forget about schools, even people who have done their masters or even PhD are not so familiar with the libraries. Whereas in the US, you ask a fifth grade student, they will say, well, I went to the library, did this work, etc. Why? Because it is library centric. Why? It is learner centric. So in my view, if you really implement the new education policy in India, it would become more and more library centric, primarily because the students have to learn, not just go by what we have to move away from this transference. I call it as the transference model. Teacher has some idea and we transfer that, okay? No, from that model to what I call, I would even go to that extent of using, in Kannada or in India, we use the word Vidyarthi, right? What is the meaning of Vidyarthi? Vidya Arthi. Arthi means seeker. Seeker of knowledge. So when you are a seeker of knowledge, not just a student, you are seeking knowledge and you go beyond your curriculum, beyond what the teacher said. And where do you go? You go to a knowledge repository, which is nothing but the library. So in my view, if we implement the NEP in its true spirit, not just changing from 3-year to 4-year, that's a structural change. This is one. But the true spirit of the NEP is to make it learner centric, to make it flexible, make it more innovative, etc. If you do that, then libraries' role or central place is actually reassured or assured, I would say. It would enhance.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering the questions. Thanks to the speakers. This is all from the Q&A session. Over to you, Sumak.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, respected speakers, for answering the questions of the participants. A small announcement before presidential remarks. We will now send the feedback form link in the chat box as well as your registered email addresses, which will be active for the next 48 hours. Kindly fill in the same and send back for e-certificates. The e-certificates will reach you within 7 to 10 days. Very shortly, we will meet in one more international webinar of our evening college, that is on the 30th of this month. The topic is on Global Standards in Library Sciences 8, organized by the Department of Library and Information Sciences in association with University of Toronto, Canada, and Indian Statistical Institute, ISI, Bengaluru, India. Now I request Sri W.D. Ashok sir, Honorary Trustee of Seshadripuram Educational Trust, to render the presidential remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. From Seshadripuram Evening Degree College, IQAC Initiative, Department of Library in association with MYRA School of Business, Mysore, organizing this international webinar, a very wonderful one. I would like to thank both the speakers, Dr. Chiranthi and also Madam Shalini, Dr. Shalini Madam. A wonderful explanation from the basics to the current digital versions. I would like to thank both the madams for their wonderful session. And just to brief those who have missed whatever the speakers have said or joined lately, I would just like to brief up the whole and summarize the things. Just Madam was just telling about metadata earlier and standards, how metadata standards are supporting the systems of libraries and how machine readable catalogs are being utilized and how Dublin Core has been utilized in the library and also in the data presentations or digital versions of the library, how it has been used also Madam has given. And I would like to just say Dr. Shalini Madam, as from the fundamentals of structuring with beautiful examples, she has given wonderful understanding for basics. People also can very much, it was just like a school lesson, like I would like to say, it went on very beautifully. The centrality of organization, order is Evans' first law. And also she explained basically of our Sanskrit versions of Panini, how we brought about the structuring of languages and how periodic table also gives a wonderful structuring. And she explained everything. And regarding semantic web, because many were, I don't think many will be having the idea also about semantic web. in our regular pattern of education. She has explained it in a wonderful way, where the semantic web, before to that, people used to just follow a link and press the link and get the data. And after that, they started, as Madam said, Google or the Facebook started giving some continuity of informations, because the earlier links cannot be continuity. It was a one data links only. So later on, Google started giving multiple links with the connectivity of data. So it was somewhere near to the web series what Madam was telling. I think I'm correct. I don't know how much. Just to say that at the same time, this document started to be available in the software portals like the YouTube also and the Facebook also, but they were not interconnected. So the semantic web or the Web3 is a web of documents. This connection of interrelated data of the web can be referred to as a linked data. Madam has just given it. And various data technologies also, Madam gave it, RDF or the OWL or the sprawl are used in the current versions of the data, and given more importance of all the present metadata also, how it has been framed. Even I was very much happy to learn some of the things which was unaware of, and to say that World Wide Web, in which data is web pages, is structured and tagged in such a way that it can be read directly by the computer. This is the one which is very important and which is being taken up, I have to just say. That is, it's not just people reading it, the data or the tagged structures in such a way that it can be, the computers also can read it directly, and it is the interconnections which are being given more importance, I think, at the present situation, where it can pick up the languages or the data in a systematic way and bring it more in a much more web connectivity, as Madam has shown in different examples also. The semantic web has been referred to as the linked data web, or even it has been given the name the web of data or the Web3. All these names are the same as Madam mentioned, and just to give importance or give the criteria for the one who has brought it up, Tim Berners-Lee, who has Madam gave the name, and just to term it, and at the same time a wonderful explanation from the even the questionnaire, and Madam also answered how the NEP 2020, how beneficial it is, and how people has to react in a positive way, and see that NEP is also adopted in all institutions in a very familiar way, and to not take it as a strange one, and it should become a acceptable one in the coming days. I would also thank students of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College to have given this wonderful opening presentation, especially Deepika, Prerana, and Samuk have given wonderful starting. And also like to thank the coordinators of the college, Nagasudha Madam, Rajat Sir, Dhareppa Konnur, Vinay Sagar Sir, and thanks to principal to have brought NS Satish Sir, who has coordinated this wonderful platform. Thanking one and all, a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for rendering the presidential remarks. I now request Deepika of second year BCom to propose vote of thanks. Over to you, Deepika.
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Deepika, second year BCom student of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College. It is my proud privilege to propose vote of thanks on behalf of Seshadripuram Evening Degree College on this occasion. At the outset, I thank MYRA School of Business, Mysore, India, for associating with us to conduct this international webinar. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to today's theme speaker, Dr. Chiranthi Wijesundara, Senior Assistant Librarian, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, for rendering a theme talk on metadata standards in digital libraries. I'm humbled and grateful to you, ma'am. I would like to acknowledge our sincere thanks to Dr. Shalini R.R.'s, Founder and Chairperson, MYRA School of Business, Mysore, India, for rendering a theme talk on knowledge organization standards for the semantic web. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I express our sincere thanks to Sri W.D. Ashok Sir, Honorary Trustee, Seshadripuram Educational Trust, for rendering the presidential address. Thank you, sir. My special thanks to our beloved young and energetic principal, Professor N.S. Satish Sir, who is the robust of our Seshadripuram Evening Degree College. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
I would like to thank Dhareppa Konnur Sir, Program Coordinator, Rajat B.S. Sir, IQAC Coordinator, who have helped us to materialize this webinar. I express our gratitude to all the principals, conveners, and members of our sister institutions and other colleges, academicians, research scholars, students, and delegates across the globe for participating in this webinar. I would like to convey our heartfelt gratitude to Seshadripuram Evening Degree College.
Thank you, Deepika. Once again, thank you, Honorary. Principal sir, can we conclude the webinar?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chiranthi, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for joining with us. Thank you, Ashok, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you
good
very
evening.
much.
We are concluding now, sir. Thank you. Vinay Sagar, sir, please conclude the session.
Yes, sir.